Most of you know that it is thanks to the love and support of this community that we were able to build a village for special needs children out in Tanzania. That village now provides a safe and loving home to nearly 200 children that were living in crisis. Most of these children are special needs, but a lot of these children were homeless, and the majority have no parents or guardians in this world other than the family that this community has allowed us to create. Everything that we do to support these children is made possible by this community and those who choose to share what they can and get involved and become, as I often call it, in their own way, a percentage of the parental role for these little ones. For those of you who are already partnering with us, thank you for the love and support. But for those of you who don't know about it, everything that we do is made possible thanks to partners, those who choose to partner with our family and with it make everything that we do possible and keep our doors open for the next children who need some help or a safe and loving family home. If you'd like to hear more about our partnership program, you can do so by visiting www.sharetanzania.com/partnership. Thank you for all of the love and support, guys. We couldn't do this without you. God bless. Are non-human entities influencing our world leaders? Are non-human entities affecting men and women who are either openly in allegiance with them and communication with them, or are living in such a way whereby they are in a frequency state that they can be influenced by them or possessed by them? Who are these non-human entities? Why are they here? What is it that they seek to do with humanity? I, as this human organism sitting here, having its intelligence animated by the same loving awareness, the soul essence that dwells in your body and all bodies, the collective of humanity, has the same awareness in each and every one of us. Whether you, as that awareness, have gotten lost in the hardware of the fallen self, the knowledge of good and evil operating system and body, and you have gotten lost in thought and tangled in identification with personal history, personal self, and a linear timeline of identity. If you are there, I do not know. But if you are not there, I know that my words will be easier for you to hear. For when you no longer identify with thought and memory, and you set yourself free into spirit, away from flesh, as Yeshua called it, when you break free of the enslaved state, the fallen state, you begin to decode a larger bandwidth of reality. The restricted perception that was changing the way your reality is no more. And there you begin to see things. It would be very easy for this human organism sitting here to recall memories and records from my past of supernatural events in which I have observed with my two eyes these non-human entities, or in which I have had out-of-body experience, or in the work of deliverance or clearing unwanted energy from people, that which we have seen and witnessed. However, then you are left with the conundrum of whether or not to believe what I am saying. And therefore it seems to be wiser to try to lead people, to walk people towards the place where the restricted experience and bandwidth of reality is broken down. And in that expanded bandwidth of reality, you can have the direct experience of understanding how the reality is and that these non-world entities are here. When you have a direct experience, belief is over. You now know. And so it seems wiser to move there. And when we look at, for instance, the presidential debate, by simply being aware of what is taking place, your intelligence is more free to understand what is happening. And without any affiliation to the left or right or the policies, it may sound laid back and immature, but it is not. I understand there are complexities to make things work. I have a workforce that I am the head of over 150 people. I understand that there are complexities in running things like a village, which is the only element that I have to run. I can't imagine a country. However, when you are able to be aware of humans without identification with their identity based in thought, you can begin to see how these entities are able to control our world leaders and which world leaders are vulnerable to the influence of these fallen forces. So I wish to try and bring us to there with what I am sharing, but before I do, let me share this. These non-human entities, I am not alone in understanding that they are with us. In recent months, Tucker Carlson, a household name, has publicly said that he is certain that there is non-human influence affecting the planetary stage.
They're not aliens. They've always been here. There are forces that are not human, that do exist in a spiritual realm of some kind, that we cannot see, and that when you think about it, sort of make you think we live in an ant farm. That is real, yeah. Okay?
Why are they here? What is their goal? To see that, we can lean on even theology and historical elements that have recorded their presence with us. And from there, you can begin to build up an image of who they are, these fallen angels, these fallen beings, who wish to corral and control humanity's consciousness and collective intelligence as a resource towards their goals, towards their wants, that which benefits their plan and their sojourn within inside creation. If we are to look at how they were recorded in history, the Nag Hammaadi Scripture, the Dead Sea Scrolls, were discovered in recent history, and 20% of the writings are referencing the Archons. Now, Archons is a word that is being used to point at these non-human entities influencing humanity. The term Archon depicts a false creator species, and it is said that this false creator species created its own realities, and in creating its own realities, it drew into it what is called the Sophia. And the Sophia is the awareness, the soul awareness that dwells in my body and in your body. The same light of consciousness that animates life is the light of Christ. It's from that Christic dimension. I've said this before, but if you take an innocent child whose eyes are lit up, they are yet to build the entanglement of an image of self in thought. And we feel the purity coming through as that Christ essence is shining through the child, unrefracted by the structure of an ego, unrefracted by its thought. And so their ability to mimic the love of Creator, to be a channel for it, which is a love without condition, a generous heart, is somehow felt. And when we are with an innocent child, we feel it. And this is why Jesus said, unless you become as children, you will not enter the kingdom. We must return back to that place where we are able to let the Christ light out of us and do so unrefracted by our thought and its conditions. That Christ light in the Nag Hammaadi is the Sophia. The Archons are said to have taken the Sophia into matter and placed it into the tomb of a fallen world. It is said that within that world they are able to alter and create illusions by changing the perception of the species that are experiencing it. In Islam, they called them the jinn. The jinn were able to create illusion. You can take a room of 5 people, and if you change the perceptions of each person, they will experience reality in a completely different way. Thereby you create a virtual reality for each person by simply altering their perceptions or their programming of how they decode reality. The Archons are said to lack a capacity that humans have. That is, that they are unable to create on a blank canvas. Humanity can. Archons cannot create from the blank canvas state. All they have the capacity to do is to analyze existing creation and then mimic it and tweak it and change it. And therefore the human capacity to create from a blank canvas is a resource that they wish to harness, for they cannot bring forward original creation. They can only steer other species to do so. They can only steer other collective intelligences to draw from the all-knowingness of the living God original creation. Meanwhile, as they do not have access to that place due to their spiritually corrupted state, they wait for that creation, then they learn from it, they analyze it, and then they mimic it. These beings have taken a pre-existing Eden species, a being that was united with Creator, and they have spliced us with their own DNA to ensure that we could be enslaved, or, as the Bible calls it, fallen, a fallen species that now runs through the knowledge of good and evil operating system. The fallen species that we are is in a state that is neither alive nor dead. Now, in the Sumerian creation story, which is the first creation story we have on the planet, it says that a non-human force came to Earth and created a slave that was neither alive nor dead. Now, this topic of neither alive nor dead, in Yeshua's terms, is spirit alive, flesh dead. In the terms of Buddha, it was transcending the illusion of Maya, and enlightenment would be alive and the unenlightened state is dead. This conflict within us still plays out, and you see that we too are in an incessant state of analyzing our reality. We are constantly analyzing, and this is not to demonize analysis fully, but there is an expanded way where we can access the all-knowingness of Creator. And this seems far too simple for many, but we call this the road of faith, whereby you actually tap into the consciousness of the all-knowingness of Creator, and in that space you await with loving awareness of all that is around you without a need to hold it, grab it, analyze it, control it. You await divine revelation and guidance, and you follow it blindly in faith, knowing that it is a message from the all-knowingness of Creator. The majority of humans are not there. We do not live in that space of freedom from that knowledge of good and evil self that we have within us. Rather, we analyze constantly, and we sit in the throne of life, this image of self that is always using thought and analysis to determine its direction. And great suffering lives inside that operating system. For in that space of analysis you separate from God. It is a small trick within humanity, and this is all important to understand these non-human entities and how they influence our leaders. When we are dragged into the space where we analyze everything, you create an analyzer inside of you and a topic of analysis outside of you. That creates an illusion of separation, and when there is no analysis, unity consciousness returns. You connect in unity to all that is, including its creator. And there the connection for the walk of faith and the supernatural life is opened. There must be no separation. We carry their DNA in part, and therefore we are conflicted. And this is why Yeshua comes with the message to sidestep that operating system of flesh or the knowledge of good and evil and step into spirit, where the spirit can guide you. They have a problem with that, for when you step into spirit, they don't have an ability to predict what you are going to do. You now have access to original creation. You now have access to the all-knowingness of Creator. They have a vast amount of knowledge in comparison to humanity. They have analyzed endless fragments of the creation field in which we live. And they have gathered all of that knowledge together to become false creator gods. However, where there is knowledge, there is ignorance. They are not all-knowing. And if you can access the guidance of an all-knowing creator, which we call Christ, you are an unpredictable enemy to them. For they have no idea if you will create something that will sidetrack their goals and their plans. Now, why would they create humanity to begin with, aside from needing to harness our intellect for this blank canvas creation capacity that we have? They also have an energetic need. And that energetic need in the Nag Hammaadi, we call it the Archons, drag in the Sophia to animate their creation. The Sophia is the God force within us, the loving awareness within us. That Sophia is energy that they want, but they are not freely able to access it, for their frequency state is so corrupted that they are in a lower bandwidth than where the Sophia energy can connect to them. And so building a biological machine, in a sense, that can take the Sophia into it, which is the innocence of consciousness within us all. And if their machine is complex enough, it can make the Sophia get lost inside of it in the game of thought, in the game of meanness and personal history, in the game of analysis. And in that state of separation, a yearning is born, a void occurs, and then they can offer the vessel, which has now trapped the Sophia energy within inside its maze of thought, pleasure, a comfortable prison cell of worldly desire to try and medicate the sense of distance the void has created. In doing so, the human organism is a sentient life with free will, animated in its core essence by the Sophia. If we retract away from the human vessel and we go into things such as fasting, and we distance ourselves from the five senses, we return back to our true nature of light and compassion. We disconnect and we know our Christ nature, we feel it. But when we're too deeply in the flesh, our sin nature is that which controls us. Their game is to get the Sophia into the sin nature, into the flesh, so that you bring it and deliver it into frequency ranges where they can now access it and extract it. And this is the energy extraction matrix that the Archons have created, the upside down reality in which we are having our existence, and clearly has the beauty of God within it, for you can see it all around you, but they are only able to mimic original creation. This is not theirs, it's a mimicry of God's greatness. But within there, by altering our perceptions through various different means, They have created illusory realities, as Islam said with the jinn, just as the Archons do, the great deceivers. Just as Yeshua said, this is the fallen world, and the prince of this world is Satan, the great deceiver, the great liar, the father of lies. This reality, for all the beauty of God within it, is therefore not to be worshipped and lived for. We must protect it and look after it and respect it, but we must not seek worldly power over the power of Christ and its will to be made manifest through the human organisms that we are. If you do not believe me on this topic, know this: Yeshua said, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places." There are two elements here. You can say demon and you can say non-human entity. The demon element of this has no body. They have no body and they seek a body. The non-human entity have a body in another dimension but are seeking your Sophia light, your energy. Those we can call Archons, and I believe they are a collection of species. They are not one species. When humanity was brought into the fall, into our knowledge of good and evil operating system, the way by which the Archons could guarantee our enslavement to that system, to adhere to their DNA codex over the original codex in which they tampered with and hacked, was to ensure that we had a hardware within us that was very potent and very persistent, that would generate an image of self. And this image of self bases itself on a linear timeline of its existence. And so, to return back to Yeshua's teaching, unless you become as children, you may not enter the kingdom. And when we meet an innocent child where the light is clearly vibrant and the joy and the love is there, we recognize something special here, because that hardware at that time hasn't taken a hold of the awareness and created an image of a personal meanness. Now, we all must create that image to function within reality. That image is not our enemy, and I am certain in the Eden operating system we would have that image, but this image now is heavy and wants control. And as such, we, to remain enslaved, had to believe that that image is who we were, above all things. And so we are taken into this linear name, in the current time, name, nationality, academic achievement, religious identity, relationship identity. And we take all of this and we build an image inside the software of the hardware, and that image we call an ego or a personal self. And what we do is we take this ego and we sit it in the throne of life, and instead of being animated by the living God's presence here and now, we are in the dead state of analysing constantly and weighing up and summing through our memories what to do, and then moving forward. This linear state was opposed by Yeshua. Yeshua said that that structure should not be there, and the way he described it was, unless you hate your mother and your father and your brother and your sister, you cannot be my disciple. One of the hardest elements of that linear structure, the birth certificate identity as I often call it, to be free of is relationship. It is very hard to allow the Christ, the living God, to animate the vessel here and now from a space of humility or loving awareness of all creation and awaiting that revelation. It's very hard to do that when the image that has protected your children of a father, for example, wishes to interfere. Creator is saying, come this way, and in faith you will follow it, but now there's this program in you that says, but I am a father, and if I go that way, there may be danger. And so you begin to integrate fear and analysis, and the operating system causes you to separate from the will of your Creator. unless you hate your mother, your father, it's not to hate them. It is to ensure that you operate from the living God's presence and don't allow these elements of your identity to interfere and derail you. This image of self, therefore, must die for Christ to be born, as it is said in the Scripture. We must die and Christ be born. This space where Christ is born, without the baggage of the word Christ, is a space where you are merely, potently, lovingly aware of all creation. Sound plays with your ears, light plays with your eyes, and there, the restricted experience of reality begins to give way, and an expanded experience starts to take place. Therefore, if these Archons wish to influence humanity, they can only influence humanity, or the points of humanity within the story of mankind, that are heavily identified with thought as who they are. And therefore, when you see something like this presidential debate, which was a joke and a farce in many areas of it, and you see supposedly two men that are, again, allegedly supposed to run the free world, for all I do not believe that that is so. I believe there is another structure behind the scenes that we are completely unaware of. The immaturity of the exchanges are two things. One, evidence and a giveaway that these men are identified with thought. We are speaking in a cosmos which is infinite, with so much mystery and wonder, so much love to be shared, so much beauty to be created. We are in a world where children are suffering and dying. We're in a world where people are homeless and struggling with drugs. And you have two men competing, supposedly, to run the largest economy on planet Earth. And they are arguing about who can hit a ball further down grass. They are posturing and climbing over one another's identification with thought. My image based in thought is better than your image based in thought, which is profoundly dualistic, the knowledge of good and evil operating system. And there's no wisdom in duality. There's no wisdom to be born in duality. God's wisdom is not there. Or they are well aware what they are doing, and they are master deceivers, and they are presenting to the world that this is a very regular state of being, and it's okay to be that way, so that humanity never thinks to inner engineer and embrace the wisdom of Creator and step over the top of this duality that has us wrecking the world around us with war and everything in between. This is a simple way to perceive it. Those who are heavily identified with the story of me will look down on another not to pull them up. And this takes place not only in presidential candidates, but it takes place in spiritual communities. It is constantly the want of the archonic DNA within you, the slave self, to look down on others, to elevate the image of self based in identification with thought. I have seen it with people in spiritual communities who will look down on another because they feel they are more spiritual as they are retaining their semen, or they are meditating more. And they are not looking down saying, brother or sister, I can help you to elevate. They are looking down to push them down to give themselves a sense of elevation. For even if the image that is conjured in thought is spiritually filled with paraphernalia of religion and Christ and Krishna or whatever else, it's still the slave operating system. It's still not the stillness of unity with Creator. It's still an image of a personal meanness and a personal history driving the life. There will be a personal history when the living God animates you and takes you on that new road, that expanded bandwidth of functionality. But that personal history should never be that which determines the direction of your life. It it should always be here and now, the living God, the presence of the living God. And so the Archons rely on humanity being in a contracted state, and the contracted state comes from identification with thought. I am not belittling people who play golf. It's a beautiful sport, it's social, it requires a lot of skill, it's out in nature. But when you have two world leaders who have the fate, supposedly, of billions of people in their hands, on a stage arguing about that, there is a quick giveaway. These men are identified with thought and feel a need to try and defend that image that has no substance or meaning. It has no meaning to the greater good of all things if one man can hit a ball further than another. And there's the evidence that these are men that can be or are influenced by the Archons or these non-human forces. Now the question is, in this world we have Christianity telling you that the father of lies is Satan, and that the prince of this world is Satan, and that this is the fallen world. Therefore, deception is the archonic game, it's the satanic game. Meticulous, organised, scientific, well thought through deception to steer human consciousness and intelligence in a direction that benefits the Archons. Therefore, this deception can be so great and vast and far-reaching that the boundaries of the goodness of your imagination may stop you from ever imagining such deception is possible. The deception of the fallen ones is outstretching the boundaries of the goodness of your imagination. This is a very important phrase. And therefore, we return back to asking the question, could these men be in open allegiance with them? Could they be being possessed by them? Well, there are some small, interesting giveaways around the world. And if you look, for instance, at the former head of the Israeli space program, and I think I will close with this, the former head of the Israeli space program, after retirement, said that he could no longer live the lie. And he went public. And he was a public figure in his nation. He was well known. He went public and he said that the US and Israel has treaties with non-human entities. It has relationships with extraterrestrial and interdimensional forces. This is a man who stands to lose everything by saying that and gain nothing. And yet he did it. He said that President Trump at the time was meeting with them. Israel's space agency head, one of the most powerful nations in the world with their international support and the network that they have. One of the most powerful nations on earth. The head of their space agency has a crisis of conscience and publicly after retirement tells everybody that non-human entities are influencing and in treaties and in relationships with the Israeli and the US government at least. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places. Why would we be so immature to believe that in another dimension that we have called the spiritual dimension, that fallen angels, that reptilian humanoids, that interdimensional lower astral beings would not have technology, would not travel interdimensionally with craft, would not create 3D avatars such as the grey aliens that can function in the short grey aliens, I will say, that can function in this reality whilst embodied by one of these beings from another dimension. We ourselves, if we were a fourth or fifth dimensional species living in a dimension outside of this one, we may well engineer a biosuit that we can move around in the 3D within. And I am certain that, as I have seen a grey alien before, as I've made a video about, that the They are biosuits for higher dimensional beings to examine and study the fallen elements of this particular space where we are. I've covered this with the Moon Matrix video, if you want to dig a little deeper. How we were enslaved, how the substance that harnesses our consciousness was restricted within us. All of this equates to one thing. Humanity is being steered as a resource in this fallen world. And the solution is you. And however much you hear this, people don't want it. They want somebody to open a door and fire bullets and it be over. But this is never going to be it. Yeshua had to fast to overcome this world and its comforts, so that the truth could resonate in his cells and the power of God could change the fallen program codes around him. Therefore, why are you not fasting if he had to fast? I am aware fully that it was after my prolonged water fasts my consciousness changed. I had the ability all of a sudden to see things differently. I started having new experiences that I used to leave in the realm of belief. Therefore, what needs to be done is we need to become aware of our five senses. Our five senses must die. Yeshua dies in Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And he takes 5 wounds. When he takes the 5 wounds, he is no longer man, he is Christ. You must take the 5 wounds. You must kill your 5 senses, but not treat them as your enemy. Become aware of them so they are not your master. And as you become aware of them, the consciousness that you are will expand, for within inside of your organism, through the 33 vertebrae, the sacred substance of the Sophia, which embodies the Sophia energy within you, will travel the 33 to Golgotha and be crucified in your skull. Yeshua was crucified at the age of 33 in Golgotha. When your 5 senses are no longer unruly, that will occur with your life as well. When you take the 5 rounded stones that David did and you strike Goliath here, your energy will rise, you will gain the higher expanded bandwidth of functionality. Therefore, the solution is you becoming a Christic human. For there you will anchor frequencies in this world where if you enter a room where those entities are, they must flee, take a knee, or be purified. For they are operating from a dimension, let's say the 4th or 5th dimension, but you have now reached up to the 12th, the 13th, the Christic dimension, and you are bringing in program codes to this fallen world, and there's nothing they can do about it. But if you try to rewrite the fallen world using fallen program codes, in other words, if you try to change the world whilst still identified with thought and analysis as your road and path, those codes will not take a hold unless the Archons want them to take a hold. This is why they do not like Christic men and women, for we are unpredictable. We have the capacity to create original creation, and they don't see it coming. They don't see the avenues by which it will be done. And so when you take that road, as with many of the saints and the sages and Christ himself, the Archons will draw a target on your back. I've had this year, whilst simply trying to light a fire in human consciousness that there are invisible children, millions of them across Africa, suffering and tied up in the dark, being sacrificed. I've had attempts on my life this year, multiple, only trying to bring light to disabled children. For the Archons need that suffering. They need that heaviness. It's a fuel for them, and they have no empathy. They have no remorse. They don't have all of that. And that is why humanity is so vulnerable to their deception. For we expect that they would have remorse and empathy for the deceptions that they push upon us. But they don't. It's not there. It's absent. It would be like programming an AI to be a master deceiver. It would have no empathy. It would just deceive to the best of its capacity. And there are humans who have lived life I have been all things unholy. If God can work through me, he can work through anyone, as St. Francis said. I've lived in a space where I touched the DNA within me where there was no empathy, when I was breaking the law before I found God, etc. And you too may have done it. But what if you aren't of the DNA of Christ as well? If you've touched that place, what if they have no reference point for anything but that place? Therefore we must be vigilant and aware, and be hyper aware of the humans around us that are vulnerable to their influence. And there are giveaways, and the main one is that they identify with thought, not the living God is their identity. Here and now, you are all things coming forward as a human. If your mind acknowledges that as an idea, it's not the same as it in your cells. It in your cells is the supernatural life. It is the idea. You will not have as yet the supernatural, your cities, your gifts of spirit, this expanded bandwidth of reality that they are desperate to keep you away from. I will leave it there. I love you all. There are many more people speaking about these beings in different ways, the history of them, what they are, who they are. For me, I am more geared as a human to say, this is how you stay free of their influence and how you spot their influence. This is how they are trying to keep us enslaved. I love you all. God bless, guys.